All right, so let's go ahead and go through our memory verse this week. Porque por gracia sois salvos por la fe, y esto no de vosotros, pues es don de Dios. So that's, of course, by grace are ye saved through faith, and that not of yourselves, it is the gift of God. Now I'm going to go through the verse word by word during the lesson because it has a little bit to do with the lesson. And so that's why I chose this verse for this particular day. But let's go through our vocabulary list. Sucio means dirty. Limpio means clean. Malo is bad. Contento means happy. And it's easy to remember, like content. Contento. Triste means sad. Enfermo, sick. Think of an infirmary. And then cansado means tired. What does consado mean? Married. Okay, so it's just one letter different. Cansado is tired. Consado is married. Importante is important. Pequeño is small. And el versículo is the verse. And then we're going to go ahead and learn about the grammatical concept today of predicate adjectives and predicate nouns. Now, let me show you in English, first of all, what this is, okay? If I say, for example, Solomon is an electrician, okay? Right? This right here is what part of speech here? It's a noun, but what part of the sentence is it? The subject, right? This is the subject. This is the verb, okay? This is a state of being verb, okay? This right here is what's called a predicate nominative. It is a noun that follows the state of being verb that basically restates who the subject is, okay? For example, if I said Phoenix is a city, okay? The subject is Phoenix. The state of being verb is, and then basically we're restating what the subject is, a city. And so this is what's called a predicate nominative. Because if you remember, sentences divide like this. Subject, predicate, right? If you remember that back from English class. Now, a predicate adjective is if we were to say, Solomon is tired. Okay. Same thing. We got the subject, we got the state of being verb, and then we have an adjective, tired, right? We could say happy. Solomon is happy. This is a predicate adjective. Does everybody understand? Any questions about that? Okay, and then where's my tissue box? I'll use my eraser here. Now, in Spanish, we're going to start out by looking at predicate adjectives. Well, the first one that's listed there is the house is white. La casa, the house, es, there's our state of being verb, right? And then blanca. So basically, when we use a predicate adjective in Spanish, the adjective that we use has to agree with the subject, both in gender and number, okay? This is a feminine word, la casa. So therefore, we have to use a singular feminine adjective, blanca. Now, if you remember last week, we learned about noun adjective agreement, do you remember? And we just learned how to say la casa blanca, the white house. Okay, this time we learned how to say the house is white. The next one there, el hombre es viejo. The man is our subject, is, right, viejo, old, and it has to match. Now, where this changes from English is that in English, the adjective does not have to agree with the noun. We would say the house is white, the houses are white, and then there would be no difference. But in Spanish, it's different because if you look at the third example there on your handout, los animales, the animals, son, and then if we want to say young, we have to make it agree with the subject, so it would be jóvenes. Los animales son jóvenes. And then, of course, the next example on the handout, las mesas son sucias. So we have to make it agree to be a feminine plural predicate adjective. And then Dios es eterno. God is eternal. Okay? Esteban está contento. Stephen is happy. Now, the state of being verb in Spanish can be one of two different words, right? It can either be ser or estar. And both of these are used with predicate adjectives because it depends on what the adjective is. For example, if it's old, el hombre es viejo, that's not the way that he feels, that's not a condition, that's a permanent thing. I mean, he's old. And so that's going to be ser. Whereas contento, triste, which means sad, enfermo, sick, cansados, means tired. Those are things that change moment by moment, day by day, and therefore they get the verb estar. Now, let's talk about our memory verse, as we said. Ephesians 2:8. Porque means what? We've already had this as a vocabulary word. What does it mean? Because, right? For. Porque por gracia, by grace, is what that means. Sois salvos. Okay? Now we're going to understand why it says that. Now, first of all, we did not learn this in the conjugations of the verb ser, the state of being verb, when we learned soy, I am, eres, you are, familiar, es, he is, or ustedes, and then somos, son, right? Remember this? Well, we always left this one out because it's not used in this part of the world. It's used in very few places in the world. But in the Bible, it is used. So let's learn just this one word today because we're learning it in our verse, and that is the word sois. Okay? Now, you're not going to use this when you speak Spanish, but you're going to want to know what it means because it's in the Bible. So this word sois, what does that mean then? How would you translate that? You are, plural, right? So in King James Bible English, it would be ye are. Today it would just be you are, but it would be plural, okay? The word sois. So what this is saying here is, porque por gracia sois, what does sois mean? You are, okay? Now, they don't have to put the noun in Spanish, the subject, because we already know that the subject is ye or you because it's sois, because it's conjugate. Just like when we say, soy enfermo. We don't have to say yo soy enfermo, because we know that we're talking about I because we're using the word soy, the first person singular, okay? So if I said soy enfermo, that means I'm sick, right? And the you is basically, the I here is implied, and the you here is implied, which this word is vosotros, okay? Nosotros somos, vosotros sois, okay? So here, look at it again. Porque por gracia sois. So we have basically the noun implied, you, and I'm going to put it in parentheses because it's not spelled out. You are saved. Okay? So here's our sentence in English, right? You are saved. Now, what is this part of speech right here? We learned it at the beginning. Is this a predicate adjective or a predicate nominative? The word saved. What is it? Not a nominative, because the word saved is not a noun. Is the word saved a person, place, or thing? Saved is an adjective because it's describing a noun, right? Like, for example, I say, a saved person, right? Got that? So this is the noun right here. This is describing a person, place, or thing. So in our sentence here, we have basically, you are saved. We have the subject, okay? We have the state of being verb, again, is, am, is, are, was, were, be, being, been, okay? We get our state of being verb, and then we have right here our predicate adjective, okay? Now, if we were to say this in Spanish, and we were to use the antiquated form of the plural, then we would say what? Vosotros. But it's really not necessary because it's already expressed by sois. Okay? Now, what's the word for saved in the Bible here? Salvo. Okay? The word is salvo, but we have to make it agree with the subject. Okay? Now, is vosotros going to be masculine or feminine? Well, if we were talking to a group of only females, That's the only time any plural word in Spanish would become feminine. If we're talking to a mixed group, it's automatically masculine. Okay? Now, this verse in Ephesians 2:8 is obviously talking to anyone who's saved. Okay? He's talking to the church at Ephesus. I mean, he's talking to male and female. And so he's saying, vosotros sois, we know it's going to be a masculine plural form. So that's why it's going to become sois salvos. Okay? So you see how today's lesson about predicate nouns, predicate adjectives fits in perfectly with this verse, because it's used in the verse, vosotros sois salvos. Okay? Now in modern day Spanish, what you would say is ustedes. Let me switch to my red pen. In modern day Spanish, you would say ustedes, because they don't use that vosotros form anymore. Okay? That's something that's used in Spain. And obviously the Reina Valera Bible was translated in Spain. And so therefore it uses a little bit of Spanish forms. Just as our King James Bible was translated, in England, obviously. Ustedes, and then what would be the, which of these will we use? Son, right? Ustedes, son. And then this word has slightly changed in modern day Spanish to salvado. Okay? This is basically a form of the verb salvar, which means to save. Okay? This is the past participle form of the verb salvar. So in modern day Spanish, we would say ustedes son salvado. Is that right? No. We got to do what? Ustedes son salvados. Okay. But in the Bible, it basically, let's look back at our verse again. Porque por gracia sois salvos por la fe. Right? So that's, for by grace are you saved. For by grace are you saved through faith. Okay? Y esto means what? We learned it a few weeks back. It means this or that, right? It's a pronoun. Y esto no de vosotros. And that not of yourselves. He's basically saying, y esto no de vosotros. And that not of you, plural. And that not of you all, y'all. And that not of yourselves is what we have in King James Bible. Y esto no de vosotros, pues es don de Dios. Okay? So, by grace are you saved through faith, and that not of yourselves is the gift of God. It is the gift of God. Pues es don de Dios. It is the gift, don is gift, de Dios, of God. Okay? So, if you understand the verse, it'll be easier to memorize. So, let's say it together as a class. Porque por gracia sois salvos por la fe, y esto no de vosotros, pues es don de Dios. Okay? Let's read it one more time. Porque por gracia sois salvos por la fe, y esto no de vosotros, pues es don de Dios. And so we see that in action, basically, that sois salvos. Okay? So, let's have a volunteer come up here and put this into practice now. We're going to use the more modern day verb salvar, okay, to save. We're going to change it into its past participle form, which becomes an adjective, salvado, okay, which is an adjective meaning saved. All right. We are saved. Boy, is everybody in this class left-handed?
No.
I think what? Who's left-handed? Put up your hand. Okay, it's just all the people that are always volunteering. Nosotros somos, very good, perfect, excellent. So, nosotros somos salvados, right? Now, what if it were two ladies saying we are saved? What would be the change that we would need to make if there were two ladies? Nosotros somos what? Salvadas, okay? Or, let's say and what is this part of speech called? Is this a predicate adjective, okay? And it must agree with what? It must agree with the subject, okay? So there's a difference between parts of speech, which would be like noun, verb, adjective, adverb, conjunction, and so forth, preposition. But then there's a difference also between parts of a sentence, okay? Because parts of a sentence are subject, verb, predicate, adjective, okay? Now if we wanted to say, we are Christians, how would we say that? Nosotros somos cristianos, right? So we just write it like that. And again, there's the agreement right there, right? Nosotros cristianos, okay? So we have to agree when we're using predicate nouns or predicate adjectives. They have to agree with the subject. Now, let's put together this with what we learned last week. Let's go ahead and say, we are going to be, and you remember how to do the future? We learned it last week. It is ir, and it must be conjugated, right? Conjugated form of ir, plus a, plus infinitive. And this is, I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that, right? Because ir means what? To go. So if I want to say, I'm going to eat, right? Then I would say, voy a comer. Infinitive is all the verbs that end in er, ar, or ir, right? Voy a comer. Voy a vivir. Now, here's Brother Dave, I'm going to call you up for the hard one, okay? Now, I'm going to give you the adjective. And that adjective is consado, okay? Which equals married. Okay, now we're going to put it all together. We are going to be married. Alright? Alright, very good. So, here we have our construction for the future, right? Ir plus a plus infinitive. We got vamos a ser. Okay, ser is our infinitive, right? It means what? To be. Okay, this is we are going. Okay, right? It's encompassed by this word vamos. And then this means what? It's just basically restating we. So you could really just leave this out, right? It's possible to leave that out. Vamos a ser consados. And again, we've made this agree with our noun, nosotros. Okay, does anybody have any questions about that? So back to the handout. It says predicate nominatives. Now there's another difference when dealing with predicate nominatives, which are nouns that restate who the subject is. Adjectives are adjectives that come in the predicate of the sentence describing what the subject is. Predicate nominatives. Dios es el Señor. What does that sentence mean? God is the Lord. Okay, right? Dios es el Señor. Now, Jorge es hombre. Here's another difference. If you remember, when dealing with predicate nominatives, we don't use the indefinite article a or an most of the time when we're dealing with predicate nominatives, okay? No. In Spanish, okay? So, what does the word Jorge mean? That's Spanish for George, okay? So, in English we would say George is a man, right? How would we express that in Spanish? We would say Jorge, and remember this is what? Subject, verb, predicate nominative, okay? Jorge es hombre. And we don't leave that out. It's not necessary in Spanish, okay? If it's a or an, we don't need it. So Jorge es hombre. Okay? Now you say, well, wait a minute, why does it say Dios es el Señor? Because el is not a or an. That's the. Because if I say Dios es el Señor, I'm saying he is the Lord, right? So if I said Jorge is the man, then it would be Jorge es el hombre, okay? So Dios es espíritu. What does it mean? This sentence. It's the third one on the list there. Dios es espíritu. What would that mean?
God is spirit.
God is a spirit, right? This statement is used in what chapter of the Bible? Do you remember? John chapter 4, Jesus with the woman at the well. He says, God is a spirit, okay? So when we look at that in Spanish, we see it as God is spirit. But we have to remember that Spanish expresses things without this right here. You understand? So when it says, Dios es espíritu, the right way to translate that in English would be God is a spirit, okay? Because the a and the an is left out in Spanish. Whereas if we were trying to say the spirit, it would be el espíritu. But if we want to say a spirit, God is a spirit, as Jesus said to the woman at the well in John chapter 4, Dios es espíritu, okay? And then the next one on the list, María es mujer. What does that mean? Mary is a woman, because remember the a is left out. And just so you know, and I hope that you're learning some English grammar in this class as well, so it'll help you, understand the Bible and to communicate more effectively in general. But the word "the" is called the definite article, and the reason it's called the definite article is because we are referring to a certain thing, a definite thing. The house, not just a house, not just any house, but the house, okay? That's the word "the" in English, okay? And how do we translate the word "the" into Spanish? El, la, los, or las, depending on whether we're plural or singular, or whether we're masculine or feminine, okay? Then we have the indefinite article. And the indefinite article is just a house, or an house, if you're one of those people from another part of the world speaking English. So, the definite article, a, an are an indefinite article, okay? Now in Spanish, we call this el, la, los, las, okay? Now, this right here is left out when we're dealing with predicate nominatives, okay? But, if we want to say a or an in Spanish, who knows how to count in Spanish? Probably almost everybody knows the basic, what? Uno, let's switch pens here. Uno, dos, right? Okay, the basics. Well, this first word, one, is what we use to express the indefinite article in Spanish, okay? So, let's say we want to say a man. A man, we would say what? Un hombre. A woman. Una mujer, right? But if we want to say Jorge is a man, we'd say Jorge es hombre. We would not use this right here, okay? We would say María es mujer. So when would we use this? We would use this when it's not a predicate nominative, but when it's, for example, the subject of the sentence. Does that make sense? So if that were the subject of the sentence, we could say, un hombre está aquí, right? A man is here. So that's the difference there. So you use the indefinite article in Spanish only when you're dealing with, the subject or another part of speech, object of a preposition, whatever, but not the predicate nominative. Okay, does anybody have any questions about that? So, who can tell me how to say, they are small? How do we say they? Ellos. And we don't really even have to say it. We could leave it out, because you can leave out most pronouns in Spanish when you speak. They are small. What's going to be the state of being verb? For plural, third person. Ellos son, okay? What's the word for small from our vocabulary? Pequeño, right? Pequeño. And then we need to make this agree. So what do we need to do? Pequeños. So they are small, son pequeños. Is the way that most of you usually say, you leave this out. But you can say ellos son pequeños, or whatever sentence, whatever you want to put here. Los hijos son pequeños, or just simply son pequeños. That's a complete sentence in Spanish. They are small. So this is something that you have to get used to, because this is not going to come naturally when you're speaking Spanish, to throw that S on the end. Changing the O's to A's is pretty easy, pretty natural, but you've got to get used to throwing those S's on the end of your predicate adjectives, because you're going to want to say, ellos son pequeños. That's what's going to come naturally. But you have to throw that on there and say, not sois salvo, or sois salvado, but sois salvados. Okay, you have to throw that S on the end. It's not going to come naturally. So, does anybody have any questions? Is everybody clear on what a predicate noun is, predicate adjective is? What do we have for a verb when we're dealing with a predicate noun or predicate adjective? What verb do we have? It has to be the verb ser or estar, okay? Which equals in English what? To be. This is the state of being verb. And the state of being verb is the only thing that will produce predicate nouns and predicate adjectives, okay? And in English it would be, all the different forms. Am, is, are, was, were, be, being, been. In Spanish it's all the different forms of ser and stuff. And, it could be past, future, whatever. But it's a state of being is what we're dealing with when we're dealing with predicate nouns, predicate adjectives. So it's the same agreement as we have when we just put them together. Like, La Casa Blanca está en Phoenix. The White House is in Phoenix. It's not, of course. The White House is in Washington, D.C. So, and so forth. Does anybody have any questions at all? Don't be shy. All right, we're dismissed. Now, before we go, we're going to sing 2 songs in Spanish today, okay? Because we made a mistake with the videotape last week, so we have to re-sing last week's song. So, I'm going to go ahead and hand out, again, class number 8. You go ahead and hand those out. And we're gonna sing our today's song. Sing it out loud. Help me out here. Jose Unión la que gozo ya en los brazos de mi Salvador. Qué gran bendición en su paz me da. Oh, yo siento en su amor libre salvo. Song number 324. Tuyo soy Jesús, ya te vos oí, luz y gracia fue para mí, más en brazos de me alegró subir y más cerca estar de ti, más cerca, cerca de tu cruz, llévame. Salvador, más cerca, cerca de tu cruz, dos almas